This book is based on two undeniable truths. First, people who utilize their natural God-given talents are much more fulfilled and successful than those who don't. And second, teams and organizations that help people tap into their God-given talents are much more successful and productive than those that don't. And so it's true, they talk about this workflow in families and needing all of the different geniuses in a family setting. And they talk about, as couples sitting down and saying, okay, where's your genius? Where's my genius? And honestly, looking back on my mothering, I'm thinking, yeah, this is why I struggled so much to hold my kids accountable, but I was always full of lots of great ideas. Okay, we've got a super fun book for you today. It's a business book, self-help, but actually it's kind of like self-discovery, which is really, really cool. And I'm thinking that we're going to put it in our academies later on when you're learning all about like organizational principles. This would be a really fun one because the authors try really hard to give examples, like they're in a business framework and they're telling the story through the lens of business, but they also are giving examples from especially there's an example from running church functions and church activities and things. And I think there's some references to family life and stuff like that. But it's called The 6 Types of Working Genius. It came out just really pretty recently by Patrick Lencioni, best-selling author of The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which I've also read and is very worth reading. And he gives some backstory about his own professional career. And what I will say is there's quite a few business books, I think of like Arbinger Institute type of books, that teach a concept or principle through a storyline. And so it's digestible. You always have the devil's advocate, and so that you get the opposing sides and all that kind of stuff. But Patrick Lencioni is actually pretty funny, and it's not as cheesy as a lot of these other types of books tend to be. It's a very fast read and really interesting to listen to. And he goes into his own backstory of his career and getting his business started and all of this stuff. And then he's kind of using this this lens of looking at yourself and looking at the world as if that they discovered it because they were trying to figure out why he was so grumpy in his career, because he'd done things he didn't want to do and then that made him grumpy, but now he was doing what he wanted to do and his business was going well, and so he couldn't figure out what the problem was. And so they, the situation is that they deconstruct this as a team at work. And what I will say is that it is very applicable to any kind of team you're putting together. The whole premise is that in order to get any kind of work done, and they're kind of leaning into business work, but they specifically call out like any type of work, there's 6 processes the work needs to go through, 6 different kinds of things that have to be executed on in order for the work to get done. And by the time you get kind of 2/3 of the way through the book, they finally outline this whole structure. They do it like gears, and you probably find this image online, and they've labeled each one so that the acronym is widget. So it's a widget, they're widgets, and they're working together to get the work done. And there's the three elements of the work. There's the ideation, the ideation, the activation, and the implementation. So you've got to think up what it is that you're going to do, and then you have to figure out the structure of what that's going to look like and make a plan, and then you have to act on it. And I got to tell you, we did this with our small team at my company, and it really resonated with everybody. And we actually made this little diagram. This is a picture of my whiteboard. And actually what I identified, they have it goes like this, like I showed you in the picture, these gears. It's wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. And they do a good job in the book of explaining to you what each one of those things are and why you need it in the process, from just wondering. And that the first one is wonder, because you're just wondering, asking questions. These are people who are really good at surveying the situation and asking, like, could things be different? How could we solve this problem? And so you have to wonder about it and ask questions, and then you have to be inventive. And they talk about this inventive gear, this part of the workflow. These are usually the ones that are labeled the geniuses or the inventors, but everyone has a genius. And like, this is, we talk about intelligences and strengths and things like that in the academies, and the MDM Academy, the MDT Academy and everything. And that's because it's just different ways of being smart, different ways that we have been created, different things that we tend to be good at. And so you wonder and invent in order to ideate. That's the ideation. And then you discern of all those ideas which are the best ones. And then you galvanize, and that means getting the team on board and getting them excited about this new idea that you're going to execute on. And so you discern the ideas, you pick the best ones, and then you get everybody excited about them, and then you implement. And the enablement is just people that are really, really good at helping others to accomplish the goal. You kind of call them helpers in the book. And then tenacity is just like boots on the ground. You're checking all the boxes to get it all the way across the finish line and finish out the project. And in the book, they find that there's different people in their organization that have different strengths, and they start to move things around. And they talk about how, and you can find these kind of like Good to Great or EOS books about the right people, right seat kind of idea. And so you want them to mesh with your values in order to be in your organization. And then you move them around, based on what or you give them different responsibilities based on what their genius is. And we've noticed that if we just listen to the way other people talk, you can start to see the language of one or the other genius come out in them. And we all just, I don't think there's a test in here. I think you just kind of, I can't remember, there a test on, there's an assessment online, workinggenius.com, you can take in 10 minutes. And so we drew it out, and in fact, I could see a couple other layers in it. I saw the first three, the wonder, the invention, and the discernment, as the mental creation, and the galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity as the physical creation. So it's a lot of heavy mental work up front, and then it's a lot of physical work. Get everybody excited, help everybody succeed, and then cross the finish line and finish the task. And then they talk about the top three as being abstract or responsive, and the bottom three as being disruptive. I read that through 2 or 3 times, and it wasn't super clicking with me, so that wasn't super helpful. A super helpful piece of the construction for me. But what I will say is that we are trying to be really intentional about placing people, giving them responsibilities, managing the way that we run things based on the geniuses, and it is helping us. And one of the things that we've discovered is that we really we had someone who had a strength at galvanizing, and then they're not with us anymore. And so what we have is, you're either a genius at it, or you're capable of it, or they call it a frustration. So even if you force yourself to do it, which you often can, and all of us can force ourselves pretty much to do all of them, you get frustrated with it really fast and you find yourself being grumpy. So the author is just saying, well, I'm stuck at the company doing the things that aren't in my genius, and so I'm feeling frustrated, and so I'm getting grumpy. And they say that you basically have 2 geniuses, 2 capacities, and 2 frustrations. And I don't know that that's hard and fast exactly, but we kind of were able to label them mostly that way, and to kind of see, when I'm stuck in that space, I get frustrated the most quickly. And I really don't want to be doing that. I really want to be in these other things. And you can kind of see, like, founders of organizations and businesses tend to be in more of the head space, the mental space, the wonder, the idea, the invention, things like that. But it's not hard and fast, and I don't know, it's just been a really kind of helpful construction for us. He says, when you put a group of people together on a project, you want to have all the geniuses covered. And that is really, really true. So what I was saying is, we have this hole in our company where we don't have anybody with the genius of galvanizing, and I'm literally the only one with the capacity. So it's kind of a bummer, because I don't love to do the galvanizing and get all the troops like fired up, but I've just got to do it because somebody's got to do it, and I'm the one with the capacity, and it frustrates everybody else. And so I'm kind of holding that spot, hoping that as we grow, we can find someone else that can be that galvanizer for us. And so it's just something helpful to look at as far as that goes. To wind up here, I'll just go back to the introduction and a couple things that the author says that I specifically really love. He's clearly a God-fearing person, talks about the church part of things, but this is how he starts it. This book is based on two undeniable truths. First, people who utilize their natural God-given talents are much more fulfilled and successful than those who don't. And second, teams and organizations that help people tap into their God-given talents are much more successful and productive than those that don't. And so it's true. They talk about this workflow in families and needing all of the different geniuses in a family setting. And they talk about, as couples sitting down and saying, okay, where's your genius? Where's my genius? And honestly, looking back on my mothering, I'm thinking, yeah, this is why I struggled so much to hold my kids accountable, but I was always full of lots of great ideas. So, I even parented like this. And I think maybe if we have these kind of like with StrengthsFinder, when we have these, we just lean into them, and then we probably just get better at them too. So he finishes up the introduction with, I pray that the 6 types of working genius will allow you and those you work with to become the people God created you to be, and that your team, organization, and even family will benefit as a result. And I do see these patterns in myself. I see them in my family. I see them in our company. And so I just recommend run out and get it. Go online, take the test, see the results. It's really worth looking into. And I really do think it will benefit you in whatever team or organization, whether it's church or community or education. If you can see those 6 elements in any type of workflow, and you can make sure that the people around you, some of them have at least capacity, but ideally genius in all of those areas, your workflow will go a lot better. People will stay up and positive, and the quality of the work that you produce will be at a much higher level because everyone is working in that genius.